I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 13. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode. This is titled Essential Elements of a Worthwhile Strategic Plan. So I'm going to walk through those with you. This is nothing new to me. I've been doing this stuff for so long. It's very, very, very clear to me at this point what the essential elements are when you're thinking through and creating a strategic plan. But this is the first time I'm packaging it in a way because I am rounding out, so to speak, the resources and that are going to be available for Velocity 2020 program participants. And that, by the way, enrollment opened last week. It's still open. I highly encourage any of you who want to create a strategic plan for your firm for 2020, but you're not really in a place where it makes sense to hire Velocity Work one-on-one for the deep private client work that we do, then help yourself out. Use this program. I made it affordable on purpose, and my mission with this program is to make it the best program, the most useful program for owner attorneys out there to be able to create their own strategic plan. So it'll kind of walk you through how to do that. And I'll be facilitating and coaching along the way. Once a week, I'll hop on a live call and make sure we have everybody taken care of and things are moving forward in the right direction. So it's a lot of support in helping people create this. So doors open last week. They're still open. Go sign up. It's velocitywork.com/2020prep, which is 2020 prep. So head on over there. Check out the information. I want those of you who are interested in creating a plan for yourself, I want you to have an affordable way to do so, to not have to think through how to do it. I want to lead you through that part, and then you do the work module to module to come up with the right answers, the right next steps, the right plan for your firm. But I guide you, and it sort of just makes the process much easier for you guys, for sure. So as I said, I've been like eyeball deep in just wanting to make sure I put the best resources out there for these program participants. And as I've been refining and tweaking the content that's going to go in, and I've been building templates and things like that participants can use. It's been very, it's exciting. It gets me really energized to think about what you guys can create. So I wanted to do a podcast to outline really high level, right? Like this Velocity 2020 program is 5 weeks long, and every week we have a different focus that we dive deep on for your firm. So this is not going to be that, but it is a high level overview so that if for some crazy reason you're not going to sign up for Velocity 2020, which I can't figure out why someone wouldn't. I just don't. It just blows my mind. Like, it's affordable enough. It is useful enough. It's going to be awesome. But for those of you who decide not to, I still wanted to be able to provide a bit of a way to think through how to set one up for yourself, the things that you don't want to forget to give thought to when you're creating your strategic plan. So that is why I'm doing today's podcast. It's called Essential Elements of a Worthwhile Strategic Plan. And here's why I decided to do this, because I think when we think about a strategic plan, we tend to think of goals and prioritizing, like making sure things are in line and we have that we're doing the right things at the right time in order to hit our goals. And that is a piece of a strategic plan for sure. But when you only focus on that, it's not going to go as well as what it could. You're not going to reach your potential. And so there's some other essential elements to consider when you're putting together a strategic plan. Let's just start from the top. And this isn't something that you have to do This isn't a planning piece. This is sort of a data retrieval piece. If you do not have a way to look at your historical and your current data, and I'll say more about that in a second, then you're not going to be setting goals that make the most sense for your firm. So even if you could just get 2019 data alone, what are some of the key numbers that you would love to just be able to look at a sheet and know really quickly? Like within 5 seconds, you can look at a sheet and you could know how many leads you had every month, how many intakes you actually had every month, how many cases that you opened every month, how many cases you closed every month, the total revenue that you've had in 2019 and month over month. Those are just some simple off the top. Your marketing spend every month. Those are just some really basic numbers that if you could just know those and you could see patterns, it's nice to have them broken down by month, but be able to see where you are for the year and just look at it and notice like what's been happening over the year and notice what, should be different in your eyes, like what should be higher. So anyway, looking at data is imperative if you want to set a smart future plan for yourself. So before you do anything else, get that information, put it into a simple spreadsheet. And a lot of times firms have this stuff buried in their software somewhere, but you got to go find this metric here. You got to go find this stat here. You got to go find this here. Like pull them all out of your software and get them in front of you just on a simple spreadsheet. Super, super, super simple spreadsheet is an easy way to go. So that way you have that to go off of and you could build from there with your plan. So that's before you even set foot in strategic planning land. You got to have your data. So once you have that, then here's some elements to think through for your strategic plan, like sort of a bit of an outline. The first is personal responsibility and your leadership stance. And the reason this is important is because before you start digging into numbers, you need to have a look at yourself as the owner. And, we've talked heavily about personal responsibility, especially in episode 10, we talked a lot about personal responsibility, really owning all the results that you get, that your firm is getting. And then your leadership stance, which we haven't talked a ton about that. We're going to talk about it more and more. There's some really interesting new information that's being written about out there that is so helpful in how to think about how, in terms of you as a leader versus you as a manager, which is different. Your leadership stance is like, how do you activate people? How do you inspire people? How do you get people to follow you, like make the decisions they need to make so that they can get on your train, assuming that's the best thing for the greater good, right? So not in a manipulative way, but just actually like, how do you get people on board with a bigger vision? And so really understanding with your leadership stance that culture inside your organization, actually just inside your firm, period. Like culture, your clients feel your culture. So just culture inside your firm starts and stops with you. And there's a new book that Ben Horowitz just wrote that I'm not finished with yet. And why is the title escaping me? I will put the title in the show notes. But he talks a lot about how culture is not about a set of beliefs that are common beliefs inside of an organization. It is a set of actions. It's what you do. It's how you behave. That is really the culture. And that starts and stops with the owner, right? Or the CEO, if you're talking about a huge corporation. And so that is so interesting to think about. And it kind of goes so in line with what we've talked about in the past on this podcast, is that if you want to build a firm that is going to grow and you want to build, just this great firm and you have this vision for your firm, you have got to be the kind of person that can own that firm. And so, you can't do that just by staying the way you are right now. Not that there's anything wrong with the way you are right now, but we have to grow and evolve on the human level first in order to take this entity to the next level, right? And so he really talks in depth about that and about what should be expected in terms of internally in the organization. It's not a core set of beliefs, although that's great to have those, but it's about a core set, like a way of operating, period, and how you show up and how you do things. And the other thing with leadership stance to consider is just, we talk a lot about sustainability on this podcast and building a sustainable business, something that is stable, so to speak, as it grows. Well, that is so important. But, through my reading, there's a nuance there that I'm going to be talking more about, which is resilience is required in order for stability to be a thing. And what I mean by that is, your whatever plans you put into motion, you're going to have hiccups. You're going to have barriers along the way. You're going to have things that are not fun to deal with, that are surprises and curveballs, because that's life. That's part of the human experience. And when those things happen, the ability to be resilient from those things is so important. And that's kind of common sense, but a lot of businesses aren't resilient. And so really thinking about how are you exemplifying resilience to your team and to your clients and inside of your organization, and how do you want to think about resilience and building it into your firm? So these things matter so deeply that, taking personal responsibility and ownership, and then also just your leadership stance, you don't have to be perfect. This is not about perfection. It's about progress. And so I highly encourage you that when you're thinking through this, before you dig into the numbers, you think through this and you just evaluate on a scale of 1 to 10. You can even make it that simple. On a scale of 1 to 10, how do I think I'm doing in terms of really taking ownership over every result I get? And I want you to listen to episode 10 before you rate yourself for real, because I think there's a chance that a lot of us will give a higher score, so to speak. Like, we're doing pretty darn good. But then when you really, really look at it, like, I want you to understand personal responsibility. So listen to episode number 10 and really think through that. And if you can rate wherever you rate yourself, I want you to think through, okay, let's just say you rated yourself a 6. Okay, well, you're not a 0. So what are you doing well? Like, list out, just put some bullets down. Like, what are the things that you're doing that got you to where you consider yourself a 6? And then make a different list of a set of bullets that just list out your areas of opportunity. Like, where do you see where you could be better? There's going to be scenarios that pop up in your mind. There's going to be things really specific for you in your life and your situation in your business. So, like, write down, what are your areas of opportunity, the lowest hanging fruit that you could work on to improve in that area. And then same thing for your leadership stance. Like, how are you as a leader? How would you rate yourself as a leader? And wherever you fall, like, what are the great things, the positives that, like, it is why you are where you are on the scale. But then also then list out whatever your areas of opportunity. What is the low-hanging fruit to really up your game and be a better leader? So really think through this stuff, because it doesn't matter what kind of plan you have. If you're not evolving and becoming more and more and more of the kind of person you need to be in order to really be able to have the business you want to have, this is stuff that has to be thought through. You can hit numbers all day long, but then if this is the kind of stuff that isn't thought through, inevitably morale will be low, stress will be high, sustainability won't be there the way that it could be, resilience won't be there the way that it could be. And so these are very important things to think about before you just start throwing yourself at numbers. Okay, so that's the first thing. I mean, we talked about data, getting your historical and current data so you can really have a look at that before you even step into this game. But then in terms of elements of a great plan to think through, personal responsibility and leadership stance is the first. The second is to really know your why and to have a compelling why. This is essentially your mission and vision statement. If your firm already has one, but you don't love it, or you're not really tied to it, maybe you know it, maybe you could recite part of it, but not all of it, and your team doesn't know it, like, who knows, right? But it's just not quite as sticky as it should be, then I encourage you to take some time and make it freaking sticky. Make it compelling. Make it so that it's like it is the ember that, like, never goes out as you are moving through your business. and as your business forges on. And this is important work too, because if this firm is yours, right? You and your partner's firm. But the crazy thing is, success depends on a group of people carrying out the vision. So it's not just about you or whoever owns the business. It is about the team really moving towards that vision. And so if the vision and the mission statement, like your why behind all of it, kind of sucks, or if it's just not very compelling, it's going to make it really hard when you meet a hard time, or you come up across a barrier that you weren't anticipating or whatever. It makes it tough to really have a reason to stick with it and move forward anyway, because you've got this ignited spark in you. Like, no, we do this because of X, Y, and Z. Like, we believe so deeply in X, Y, and Z, and that's going to carry us forward right now. We may not know exactly how this is all going to unfold, but we can take a next best step based on what we know is important to us. And so having a mission and vision statement is so important. I was talking to a coach recently for mostly online businesses, but we were just talking about entrepreneurship in general. And most of the people that she coaches are doing very well in business. And she was talking about, there's always this point in their entrepreneurial journey where people will cut themselves short or give up. Like, they say they want to, make $1 million, so to speak. They say they want to make $1 million, but there's like a portion of people that just don't. They just give up. And the ones who give up are the ones who don't have a hard enough why, because inevitably the journey is going to be tough. Like, there's points of it that are hard. And the ones who have a hard enough drive behind them, like why they want to accomplish what they've set out to accomplish, they keep going. Like, it's not a question. They're going to keep going. They're not going to quit. And they know why they're not going to quit. Where the people who give up, it's kind of like it's like they fail ahead of time. They stopped trying as hard as they could have to keep progressing and to keep moving forward, because it just got hard. It got hard enough that it was so uncomfortable that it was like, my business is good here. Like, they settled. And that's okay, that people, like, that's kind of what makes the world go around, right? But what I know for sure is that the owner attorneys that I talked to, and the coach I was talking to agreed with this as well within her realm of business. The people that I talk to, they do want a business that grows. They do want a business that's doing something. They want to blow their own mind, and they want to just knock it out of the park for clients. And they want to build a team that loves their jobs and like all of these elements. And that is hard to build. And so if you want to build that and you don't have a hard enough like reason why you want to do that, you're probably going to take your foot off the gas at some point and just settle. And that kind of kills a part of you when you do that. And so, when I see people putting their foot on the gas in terms of building a business, if this is an element that isn't in place, they inevitably give up too soon, or they pause too soon, or whatever, but they just don't. It's like they kind of peter out. So the why is really important. Both of these, every element that I'm talking about today, we go in depth on. We spend a whole week really diving deep for the owner attorney that's a participant of Velocity 2020. So the personal responsibility and your leadership stance, we go deep on that. Get very clear on that. The knowing your why, we get very clear on that. I actually have an organizational identity expert who actually is an attorney as well, coming in to facilitate that week's learning, and so that the participants can take that really to a deeper level and make sure they can create something really sticky. And I think you guys know what I mean by sticky, but just really attractive and really it propels them and their team forward in no matter what, right? It is like the why, the thing they're working for. And then, so those will be covered. Same with every element. Also, for those of you who are curious, for Velocity 2020 participants, I mentioned for anyone setting a strategic plan, how important knowing your historical and current data is. I just putting the finishing touches on a spreadsheet template that I'm going to give participants before the program begins. It begins on November 11th, so you'll probably get this a week in advance at least. But this is going to be a template where you will know exactly what data to pull to put into this spreadsheet. It's editable, so you could add columns if you want to see more information kind of at your fingertips, but some really core foundational metrics we're going to look at, and I'm giving you a space to dump your own so that you can see them. And from there, participants can share it with me so I can really help them dig in deeper if they want to. So you will have your historical and current data before you begin the program. I will make sure you have a way to do that. So then once you've got your data, you dug into personal responsibility and your leadership stance. Then you really dig into your why and making sure it's compelling enough. Then you can start going into numbers and having goals. So when you set goals, they need to be SMART goals. And many of you have probably heard that before, but it's an acronym that SMART stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. A goal needs to be all of those things. So specific means you're shooting for something very specific. It can't be vague. It can't be, someone the other day, we were talking about goals and she said, my goal is just to be a good mom. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking, that ain't a goal. that's a wish, right? That's like a pipe dream unless you've got some things backing it up. Like, how do you define being a good mom? What does that mean? Like, how do you know that you're a good mom? Who decides that? Are there certain things you have to do to be a good mom? Like, I don't know. So anyway, we won't go down that rabbit hole, but for your business, inside your business, you can't have vague goals. It can't just be, I want a better team. I want more clients. No. So you got to get really specific with it. And this is why it's so important to know your historical and current data. Because if you know where you've already been, if you know that you typically every month open 25 cases on average every month, then, and maybe you want to get to 50. Okay, awesome. Well, but you wouldn't have known to set 50 wouldn't have felt right if you didn't know you were at 25. And so a lot of people base goals on feelings, like just wishes that they have. And you really need to go on facts. The more you can go on facts, the better, because it makes everything more attainable, more realistic, but it still will stretch you. So this right here is why it's so important to have your historical and your current data. So for each of those things that your historical and current data, whatever metrics you're looking at there, which, at a minimum, I would recommend your revenue month over month and thus total for 2019. If you can go back further, but even if you can just look at 2019, that'll be helpful. Your revenue, your number of cases you've opened every month, the number of cases you've closed every month, the marketing spend, that the marketing budget or the marketing spend every month, and then also things like conversion. So you want to know, like, how many leads did you have? Of those, how many, some firms even break it down like, okay, this is how many leads I had. This was the number that were qualified. This is the number that actually showed up for a consult. This is the number that actually hired us. Like, actually knowing those numbers, then it helps you see patterns and see where maybe things are falling through the cracks. Like, all that's really good data. So you don't have to have all these things, and maybe you have way more. It depends on how organized you are and how up you are on this. But I'm just trying to give you some ideas on just specific numbers that you want to be able to pull to look at so that you can set goals that feel appropriate for your business from there. So, okay, we've got the personal responsibility leadership stance. Really knowing your why, the mission and vision statement, and getting that sticky and awesome. And then setting goals that make a lot of sense based on facts, not feelings, based on data. And then once you have goals set that you are working towards, like specific numbers that you're working towards, and if it's hard, really you want to find a way to make it measurable. That's the M in SMART. Like, how can you make something measurable? If it's not a piece of data, right? Like, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I have a hunch that some of you are going to have questions about this. let's just say that you start with your wishes, right? If you really don't know what goals to set, you start with your wishes. I wish I had a better team. Okay, well, what does that mean? Like, really ask yourself what that means and write it down. I wish they were more engaged. I wish the morale was higher. I wish they were more productive. Like, what is it? What specifically do you wish was better? And then once you know specifically what you do wish was better, how can you find ways to measure progress in those areas? Like, what do you look at? Is it the number of tasks that gets accomplished? I mean, I don't know if that's going to work for your firm or not, but like, how would you know that they were more productive? How would you know that the morale was higher? Like, how would you know those things? And whatever your answer is to that, that's what you've got to measure. You've got to find a way to measure that. So this is the kind of thing that we'll go deep into during Velocity 2020. Setting goals is module number 3. Okay, then once you have your goals set, that is like putting the destination in the GPS. That is like saying, this is exactly what we are shooting for. And now you can figure out more of the how, like how are we going to get there? So the next piece in this puzzle is sometimes they're called rocks, which EOS calls them rocks, but rocks is from Rockefeller Habits. Many organizations use the term rocks, but it's basically the priorities that you're putting into place that are going to carry you to the goal, to the finish line, so to speak. Another way to think about priorities that like, and these are short term, I'm talking like 90-day priorities for yourself. Just the first quarter, what are you going to do to hit your first quarter's goals? Then it is another way to think about it is that these are the levers that you're going to pull. They're going to take you to the goals. So let's just say that you want to, if you want to increase the number of cases you open, like, or you want to increase the conversion rate, like you have a certain number of consults, but you want to increase how many convert and they actually hire you. Well, then this is where you really have to use your brain and based on your organization, what needs to happen in order for that number to go up? Maybe it's marketing, right? But a lot of times there's internal things that would shift and make the result what you want it to be. Maybe you have some inefficiencies and some holes in the client experience from consult, like during their consult and maybe after, that lead to them not signing on with you. Like they just didn't get the feeling they wanted to feel from you, right? So what do you need to tighten up? Do you need a new process? Do you need a new system around something? Is there some training that needs to happen internally? Do you need to set expectations better for clients? What is it that would make that smoother and easier for the clients to say yes? And so really thinking through that. And then once you kind of determine a couple of things that feel like the biggest, heaviest hitters that are going to make the most impact on people converting, then you could say, okay, so that's one of our priorities for this first quarter is to get, maybe it is a process that needs to be implemented, is to create and implement X process so that the client experience is smoother and it's easier for them to say yes. Like maybe that's just it. So that's how you know, like once you have your goals into place, it becomes really easy when you start to figure out, okay, what are the levers that I need to pull in order to make that number that I just set as a goal go up? And once you know that, then you can start thinking through what it's going to take internally for that to happen. And whatever it is, and it might be a team issue, it might be a process issue, it might be a marketing issue, whatever it is that needs to really be focused on, you will know what to focus on. And you just do that next quarter. You make sure you fulfill whatever priority you said you were going to get done. And it also, you want to make it really specific. So, once it's happened, it's done, that you can celebrate that progress and you can tell yep, I got that checked off the list. And it needs to be kind of big. It can't be a task. It needs to be something like a project that is going to take some time and thought and an initiative and all of that to get put into place. That's a rock. That's a priority. So once you know your goals, then based on the goals you have set, you think backwards from the goals and think through what are the different elements that are going to matter in terms of hitting that goal. What is the lever I'm going to pull in order to hit that goal? and discuss ideas. You could throw out, if you're doing this on your own, brainstorm ideas, and then just pick whatever you think is going to have the most impact towards that goal. And that's how you know what you need to do in the next 90 days. Okay. So then once you have your priorities or your rocks put into place, then you got to think through a plan for execution. I think execution is not given thought with strategic planning because it almost seems like, well, yeah, you just do your plan. Like that's the plan is done. You just do your plan. But execution has to be, like, thinking through execution has to be part of your strategic plan, because a couple of things, but number one is that you need to anticipate the barriers that are likely going to happen. And once you can make a list of barriers that you expect to happen, even if this, if the plan is not going to go smooth sailing, you're going to run into hiccups. You're going to run into unforeseen or unexpected things. And so when those, like, what do you think might happen? Like, what might come up? So then you write down those potential barriers. And then once you have those barriers, it all becomes kind of clear. Like, oh, okay, so I have like 10 things here that I anticipate could likely throw us off our game. So what, like, if barrier number one, if I wanted to wave a magic wand and make that go away, what would I put into place to prevent that barrier? What can I preemptively do to hopefully prevent that barrier? And whatever you come up with, those are just ideas, you're brainstorming strategies, right? Or solutions. But you will decide what needs to happen. And many of those things will become action items that you need to get accomplished so that you can reduce the amount of barriers or the weight of the barrier. So action items, and maybe sometimes when I'm working with clients, whatever they come up with these barriers, and the strategies or the solutions that they come up with to prevent the barriers, those become rocks. A lot of times they're like, oh my gosh, that has to happen. We're going to hit this barrier if we don't have X, Y, and Z. So we've got to put this into place, and it's a major project. And it's going to be a priority for us for the next quarter. So coming up and sort of identifying your future barriers that you anticipate or that could happen, and then also the strategies or solutions to prevent those. So that's one thing when you think about execution you can do to give yourself a leg up, because, it's not just as simple as just doing your plan. I have air quotes in there, like around doing your plan. We aren't robots, and the world doesn't respond to us the way that we always want it to, right? So really thinking through execution, not just how you're going to execute, but how you're successfully going to execute. And so the other pieces here that you want to think about are how to get buy-in from your team on the vision and on the strategic plan that you're putting into place. And you want to try to make it is your strategic plan for the firm, but you want to try to make it their strategic plan just as much as yours. And ask yourself how you can do that. How can you sort of ignite a passion inside of them to strive for these goals and to get these things accomplished, and to really, really buy into the hard work it's going to take to get the job done. And so that's why this is where your mission and vision statement that comes in so handy. Like, you have to give them something to attach to, like why they're going to work hard to get these things done. The other thing too here is, how can you make this a way for your team to come closer together as you complete this strategic planning? Like, how can or execute on the plan? How can you guys come together in a way? How can it set this up so that it brings you closer together? And see what happens. This is where you guys, especially if you're not in Velocity 2020, this is where you have to do the super thinking sessions, which was, we did super thinking part 1 and part 2 with episodes 11 and 12, but especially number 12. This is it. You have got to apply your brain and come up with like ideas, generate ideas. Do not rely on books. Do not rely on people. People can give advice and give tips, but you have got to come up with this stuff for yourself. How can you bring your team closer together on this journey. And the first thing that's going to come up when you're asking yourself this is, I don't know. Well, I don't know isn't good enough. So I don't know is always the first default answer your brain will give when it runs into something hard. So then that's where you can use the tools from episode 12. Okay, well, if I did know, what would I do? And that seems like a trick question, and it kind of is, but it works on your brain. So really asking yourself, how can I bring my team closer together? How can I get buy-in? Like, why should they care? Like, really put yourself in their shoes. Why should they give a shit that you want to meet these goals? And it all has to come back to having a really compelling why. Why are we doing this? Why are we serving these clients? Why are we trying to build what we're trying to build? And it doesn't have to be altruistic necessarily. It just needs to be meaningful to and for the people who are part of your organization and to you. So, and the other thing I'll say about execution is you really want to think through all the goals that you have set. You need to measure progress. This is something that people, they like the idea of, they like the sound of, but they don't do a great job with actually tracking. And so you've got to track on a depending on what makes sense for what you're tracking, either a daily, a weekly, or a monthly basis. You've got to make sure that someone is looking at that. And that is founder time, right? Like that's your lawyering is working in the business, taking a step back for things like this is working on the business. And you've got to take a step back with a regular cadence to look at where the numbers are, like looking at historical data and then like where things are right now. And always sort of seeing like, being fascinated, being interested, do not be emotional about it. This is math. There's no room for emotion. It's more about like understanding and noticing patterns and what's happening and being curious and fascinated so that it puts you into solution mode instead of reactive and unproductive because you're just pissed that things aren't going the way you want to go. Like, okay, well, not much is going to get produced from that place. So when you're looking at your numbers, really be thoughtful and make sure to have ways that your team is celebrated when progress is happening and when milestones are hit. And, that helps boost morale and keep everyone from feeling like they're just hamsters on a hamster wheel. Like, how can you make them feel like they're running, like milestones, or they're running from milestone to milestone, just accumulating progress, and acknowledge that, because otherwise sometimes it gets missed. There's so many people, by the way, for example, that I work with, and when they cross a really big milestone in terms of even just revenue, let's say they crossed over $1 million for the first time in their business, and they'll say, we looking at their historical data, and I'll say, okay, so you crossed 1 million by, at this point. And they were like, yeah, I guess I did. And they didn't even look at it. And not that that's something to just like stop and rest on your laurels because you passed 1 million, but that's a pretty cool milestone for an owner who started their own firm. Like once you get to that point, that's a pretty big deal. Like just to acknowledge, have a cupcake for God's sakes, or a glass of wine, or cheers, but do something just to acknowledge and celebrate. Just, it's a milestone, period. Okay, guys, to recap, essentially, I'm sorry I'm getting off on tangents. I just want to try to be as helpful as possible here. When you're creating a strategic plan for yourself, there are essential elements, and it doesn't have to be the only elements, but I'm telling you, at its very core, these are at minimum the requirements for a really well-contemplated, thoughtful, intentional strategic plan. The first is to make sure you have data you can look at just before you even get started. But then once you have that, then element number 1 is looking at personal responsibility and your leadership stance. Really giving thought there, evaluating yourself, deciding what you want to shift for yourself there. Knowing your why, knowing like what is the mission statement and the vision statement of the firm, and does it excite you? Is it sticky? Is it compelling? And if not, tweak it so that it is. Like dig deep here. The third is to have SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And this is where your data comes in. You got to base it off of like, you know, where you're coming from, you know, exactly where your numbers are right now. What numbers do you want to set for yourself moving forward? And then priorities. What priorities are going to happen in the short term in order, like what are the levers that you're going to pull that will take you to your goals? What are the priorities that need to be put into place to take you to your goals? And then once you have your priorities mapped out, then you go to the how in terms of execution. So how are we going to successfully execute this plan? And really thinking through the barriers, anticipate barriers, come up with strategies and solutions to overcome those barriers or prevent them. Think about your team and how to get buy-in. Think about morale. Think about tracking and how you're going to measure your progress. Like think about all of that, because this is most of the time an afterthought. People think they're just going to show up and crush their plan. But if this stuff isn't well thought out in advance, it just it all falls short. This is sort of a really basic outline of what we're going to be going deep into week by week in Velocity 2020. And I highly encourage you, like I genuinely cannot think of a reason that an owner attorney would not sign up for this if they want to create a strategic plan for themselves. It just doesn't make sense to me. It feels like I'm trying to sell a Mercedes-Benz for $500. That's what it feels like. And people are like, maybe. Like, what? Get in here. What the heck? So we're going to go deep in each one of these. There's going to be a class on each of these topics. There's going to be homework so that's, you know, well explained, and tools and templates to help with the homework. And then there's going to be a live call every week to go into each one of these to talk about and answer questions and coaching and offer facilitation around how to deepen your own work there and make sure you're really tightening it up and tying a bow on it before you move to the next module, which is really each element that I read you is a module that we're going to go deep into. And then I'm having a bonus module that I'm adding in for like tracking and measuring progress. I'm going to try to come up with some new templates that might help. And everything I'm creating, by the way, if you're a current private client, you will have access to everything I'm creating for this group, which is great as well. This group is, this program has really been good for making me exercise my brain and do a lot of super thinking on my end on how I can be most helpful for everyone that is willing to put in the work for themselves. And how can I facilitate that and make that easier and easier and easier on you guys? So we would love to see you there. But if for some crazy wild-haired reason you don't join Velocity 2020 to create your own strategic plan to be walked through it, that's okay. You have now this podcast to rely on as a bit of a guide. And I hope you found today really helpful in terms of how to think about going forward and how to think about creating your future plans for your firm. Okay, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. I've had a blast talking to you. I have a blast talking to you every week. You can go sign up for Velocity 2020 if you would like at velocitywork.com/2020prep. You can also, if you have a question about something I covered in this podcast and you'd like me to address it in a future podcast, you can go to speakpipe.com/velocitywork and leave us a voice message there. And that way I can either, if you put your name and email with the voice message, I can respond to you personally. If you leave it anonymously, then I will save it just for a podcast episode. But I would love to be as helpful as possible. So the more you plug into me, the more helpful I can be to you. So reach out. Let me be helpful. Have a wonderful week, everyone, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Thanks so much for listening to the Velocity Work Podcast. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you run your own law firm, you have to come see if the Velocity Work client experience is for you. Head over to hello.velocitywork.com to set up a free call. We can learn more about one another, answer any questions we may have for one another, and determine if the Velocity Work client experience is a right fit. I hope to connect with you soon. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.